age of 120, adding that his eye was not dimmed nor his natural force abated. One begins to doubt it, because it seems that, like many elderly men, he'd begun to repeat his favourite stories to captive audiences who were naturally a touch shy about interrupting him, and not always remembering the stories precisely the same way. A bit the same with some of the incantations. So, I don't want to trespass on the time that we shall have to discuss these great questions together, but I'll just try and pull my threads to a conclusion by returning to the questions I asked at the beginning. Did God make man, or did man make God? And does morality come from on high, or not? To the first question, the study of the so-called Ten Commandments allows us to return a pretty confident reply. The whole story is one of muddle, chaos, inconsistency, revision as one goes along, temper tantrums, lapses into rage, insanity, sadism, vengeance, and general losing of the thread. This would argue either for a very muddled, irrational, forgetful, inconsistent God, or for no God at all. But if we make the assumption that this mass of unresolved contradictions was the outcome of the ignorant struggles of a semi-literate, frightened species of primates, then the mystery clears up all by itself. And thus I think Thomas Paine is vindicated when he writes in The Age of Reason and writes about the Pentateuch that these books are spurious, and that Moses is not the author of them, and still further that they were not written in the time of Moses, not till several hundred years after, that they are an attempted history of the life of Moses and of the times in which he is said to have lived, and also of the times prior thereto, written by some very ignorant and stupid pretenders several hundred years after the death of Moses, as men now write histories of things that happened or are supposed to have happened several hundred or several thousand years ago. As to whether we need heaven's permission and revelation to be able to distinguish right from wrong, those who believe that this is so are on uncomfortable or untenable ground, I think, if they take their stand on the Mosaic Decalogue, or rather on the various discrepant versions of the Decalogue. The Decalogue is a record of callousness and greed and cruelty, in which one tribe seeks to claim a divine warrant for the crimes against which crimes against humanity which it fully intends to commit in any case, and goes on to commit, this time under the leadership of Joshua, with every sign of relish at its own propensity for genocide. So how could this wretched state of affairs be amended? I've been challenged and asked to update and extend the Decalogue. Well, I think we might as well first have a standardized 10, which at present we don't. Out of a possible 10, as people say, a maximum of 4 have anything to do with morality. And these are all shalt not type commandments, they're prohibitions. If I'm permitted my own wish list, and if I'm allowed to update Arthur Hugh Clough and produce the latest Decalogue, I don't think I'll propose a New Testament-style update of the sort that orders us to love one another, because, call me old-fashioned if you will, the idea of mandatory, compulsory love has always struck me as a rather sickly one, or even a sinister one, especially when it originates as an injunction from a Godhead of which, or of whom, you're also supposed to be afraid. To be ordered to love someone of whom you have to be in dread is a form of sadomasochism. It's the essence of Orwell's Big Brother cult. It's not enough to obey, you have to love the obeisance as well. It's the seedbed of the totalitarian. Love cannot be exacted. But one might argue, in searching for a new code, that at the very least we might enact some stern prohibitions. It's not just our modern sensibilities, I think, or our consciousness of the fragility of our survival as a species, that might incline us now, if we were drawing up a code, to forbid slavery, to condemn genocide, the rape and torture of children, and the despoliation of the natural order of the world. I hope that these might be considered, in Benjamin Franklin's great words contributed to Thomas Jefferson's great preamble, self-evident. Unfortunately, though, we can't do this by amending this book, because slavery, genocide, and the rape and torture of children are not merely not denounced in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, they are rather very enthusiastically recommended So if we search for ways of doing the right thing, we're consulting the wrong book. And we're looking for morality in all the wrong places. Perhaps, though, there is still something to be salvaged. And if so, it might be found in the long, vainglorious, menacing throat clearings of the very first commandment. We might give some real thought to the prohibition on the making of idols and of images. We might do well to stop forging manacles with our own minds and setting up impressions and images of ourselves as if they were divine and reified and supernatural. We might cease to make whips for our own backs. We might stop making tyrants and despots in our own image. We have rights as well as duties in respect of one another, and as one can intuit from Thomas Paine, in order to safeguard and enjoy the rights of man, we shall require a new age of reason. Thank you. Well, I think it's a very important cultural question. What are we to do with the need we have for the numinous and the transcendent when we've got rid of or talked ourselves out of or evolved beyond or educated ourselves beyond the superstitious and the supernatural? That we have not left the numinous and the transcendent behind when we've done that. The need that people have for music, for love, for poetry, for landscape, and so on isn't to be denied. It doesn't. The religious are not allowed to claim it unless they want to be pantheistic, which of course many of them do, or without realizing it. I'll give you what is my favorite example. I wrote a book about the Parthenon, a building which I think I couldn't do without. I'm sure everyone will know what I mean. I could no more do without it than I could Hamlet, or the Ode to Joy, which I think of as one of the great achievements of civilization, and certainly one of the great achievements of religion. But I can go to the Parthenon, I was there recently, and appreciate the fantastic symmetry and beauty and grace and openness of it without caring at all for the cult of Pallas Athena, or the Eleusinian mysteries, or the Panathenaic procession, or the animal sacrifices, and quite possibly the human sacrifices that were involved in those ancient Greek cults and religions. And I think in other words, the great cultural task facing post-religious society is precisely how to assimilate the insights of the religious part of humanity and the achievements of it without giving way to superstition or the supernatural, or without making for ourselves further temples where further sacrifices of humans will be exacted from us. And I think a good person could give a life to the solution of that conundrum. Everyone has to give some part of their life, I think, to working out how that's done, how we keep Ely Cathedral, how we keep religious devotional music and painting and poetry, like John Donne and George Herbert, for example, while appreciating that they were written under illusions that we don't need to share. Well, I'll have to put myself in the care and safekeeping of the audience, sir. I mean, if it's thought by everyone else that I didn't discuss the text as if it were in context and as if it were of its time and of its society and of its agricultural origins and so forth, if everyone is under the same impression as you are, then I have failed. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Apparently I don't need one. But if, as you say, it is not to be taken literally, but only at best metaphorically, then you've made the main concession yourself. And my argument would then be, well, is there anything of non-primeval morality that this is the question I asked, that we owe to this, something that without this we wouldn't have? And my conclusion is, my argument is, that the answer to that is no. That there are many evil things recommended by this text to which we should close our ears. There are many excellent things to which we should be called, which are either not mentioned or are denied, negated in this text.